Don't you want to be reunited with the people you lost? Our homecoming will be truly divine.
There's still a way out for us. But we don't have much time.
So, greetings everyone, and welcome to the Episodic Discussion Podcast. We're talking about Dead Space Remake today and how we've been playing this game for like a long time. Been playing it for like 10 hours and having a good time with it. And we're going to talk about all the changes, things we liked, things we didn't like, and we're going to get right into it from there. So I'm Renegade Albert, the host, and I'd like to introduce Max. How's it going, buddy?
Hello, it's going good. It's an absolute honor to be here. I'm very excited to talk about Dead Space because in the world of horror franchises, I would say Dead Space is about near the top. So I am pretty excited to talk about this one.
Next up is our guest, Pirate Jack.
How's it going? I'm Pirate Captain Jack. I stream on Twitch at Pirate Captain Jack. I've been playing horror games for most of my days, and to be completely honest, this is one of the best remakes to come out in the last 4 years.
Awesome. Next up is Shug.
What is up? The name's Sugar, and I'm currently playing or finishing the game right now, so I might be heavily concentrated on that, but I'm here to cast my own opinions on this podcast because I love this game.
And the last one is Spartan. All right, we're gonna move on to the first question. Let me get the document open. So, what was your initial thoughts on EA Motive taking over for the Dead Space remake? In your opinion, were you nervous, upset, relieved over time? Describe your thought process. The first person I want to go is Max.
Say that so dramatically. So, first instincts, I'm always suspicious of big AAA companies with EA, and I'll admit I've never really heard of Motive, so I had to do some digging. They did the newest Star Wars Battlefront 2, they did Rogue Squadrons, and then they did the Dead Space remake. First instinct, a little bit of suspicion, a little bit of like, has it really been long enough to like make the game itself? But definitely playing through the game, it's very clear they respected the lore, they respected the world, the feeling, they cared. So as I went through the game, I gained more and more respect for them overall. But first instincts, usually suspicion, because I'm a cynic.
All right, next up is Jack. What do you think of this question?
Truth be told, I've played a lot of Motive's games in the past. I played the Battlefront 2 2015. I played Star Wars Star Wars Squadrons. Both phenomenal games. I didn't have any reservations about Motive taking over because from what they took of the Star Wars universe and what they were doing with the Dead Space universe, I knew that it was going to be in good hands and it was going to be very much respected and taken care of. But the big thorn in my side is EA for obvious reasons. But that's a conversation that's neither here or there, if you catch my drift.
All right, Shug, it's your turn. What do you think of this?
I was actually very excited. Sure, I never really had heard of Motive. I do have some of their games. I just probably completely forgot that they existed. But I did enjoy what they did with Squadrons, which was pretty nice. Didn't really play it too much, but it was a very good game. So I was like, I put the mentality that they made a pretty good game there with EA, and I kind of trusted them to work with Dead Space, especially because that's EA's baby, in all honesty. And whenever the trailer started coming out, I was like, oh, shit, this game is actually looking really good. And I think it also came as a surprise because not really many people knew about it whenever they actually just, revealed it. So I was very excited when I saw anything that had to do with this game in general because I was a big fan of it. So very excited to see a new generation of people play this game in a, I guess, better looking format. in some way?
I'm gonna go next. Obviously there is the whole issue of EA closing down Visceral Games. They basically shuttered the studio that was initially behind Dead Space, and that warrants some very, very critical eyes, some very, very critical standpoints as to what they were doing and how they're bringing in this new team. But I will say, people need to also notice that EA has also been sort of leaving these studios alone, like Respawn with Star Wars, Jedi Fallen Order. That was filled with no micros, and they also let A Way Out slide as well, and they said, you know, we're not going to put micros in this game, and you get free co-op if you fuck with the system. So that was something that EA never really did before. Their multiplayer ventures, of course, is still filled to the brim with that stuff, but they've been, when they don't fuck with people, they will flourish as studios, and that's what happened here. I'm glad that they were open and transparent by showing off alphas and gameplay and saying, hey, if you got feedback, give it to us, because I felt if Motive didn't do that, I would have been a lot more skeptical than I am now. So as they opened up the game, they opened up my trust, and as I played it, I really dug it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was fantastic, and it was like just fixing and fine-tuning what was there with Dead Space 1, and that's what it should have been from the beginning. So that's how I feel about it. I'm gonna move on to the next question then. So, how did you feel about the general gameplay improvements that EA Motive made for Dead Space Remake? Max, I'll let you go first.
All right, so reading this when we were like, you know, getting ready for the podcast and everything, I kind of have an odd moment of what were exactly the general gameplay improvements, because something that's kind of interesting when games are remade, there's always like a debate between, do you fully, you know, to compare Resident Evil Remake 2 versus Resident Evil Remake 1, do you take the whole thing, overhaul it, improve it, but still keep the general same location, story, themes, or do you stay as close to the original while still improving it? Dead Space 1 as a game still holds up very well, and honestly, the remake holds to it, and it just tightens things up. The throw system from Dead Space 2 is there, the different zero gravity controls are there, but more importantly, there's different side quests now. The upgrade system has changed. Instead of having the entire tree, instead you have to find specific pieces that upgrade more or that unlock more of the tree. Different, I guess you could say, mini game systems like the ADS cannons and the like. All of those have been updated. I would say complete, absolute success and improvement. I have no doubt that if I went back and I played the original now, I'd be like, oh, what do you mean there isn't a system of security cards that you have to like go around that give you an ability? I guess how should I word this? The security cards gave a reason to backtrack, but they also gave a reason to explore, which helped out with the side quests, because they never threw them in your face, but instead, as you explored looking for other loot, because of the security cards, you would run into them. Not to mention, as I said, I guess the movement felt better in space, especially the weapons felt better. Overall, just an incredible improvement while still maintaining the roots of the game. It still felt like a horror game. It still felt like you were closed in, being hounded, all those things. It wasn't full on action, which might be an issue for later remakes, but just an absolute improvement overall. The phrase I used when I first played it was "my heart sings," because everything feels good and brand new, even though I have played the first one a lot. And yeah, I still hold to that looking back. It just feels glorious.
So there definitely is a familiarity to the game in terms of playing similar to Dead Space 1, but it is improvements that I've seen. Like, of course, it might be minimal, but it's still there. So we've seen the higher upgrade tree for the weapons, the fact that you can upgrade the weapons with differing things like flame rounds, or putting higher rate of fire on the little pulse rifle, the side quests, going through clearance doors and not having to use up your nodes in order to get through the door. I really appreciated that, because now I can spend time upgrading Isaac way more. So is that the Dead Space 2 combat with the stomp? I'm glad that's back, as well as the 0G segments where you can fly around, and those tedious levels of jumping from point to point is now gone. It isn't bad, and I really appreciate that they took time to really look at Dead Space 2. They really said, hey, this is what worked in that game. We're going to port it over into the first one, along with putting in the various control schemes from each game and saying, hey, this is your toolbox. You play with it, while also trying to make the game a little bit more creepier in the process. So I did enjoy that for what it is. I do have a few problems that I'm going to talk about that's relatively new to this game, but overall, improvements to be made. I think they nailed the job on that one. So, Jack, it's your turn.
Truth be told, I felt like the timing, this may be just 15 years of riddled eyesight going out, but I felt the timing for some of the things were off just a hair, especially in the 0G sequences. Being able to bounce from one platform to another felt a little bit more faster and rapid, but I can understand why they implemented the 0G open movement that they did in those segments. However, most of it just felt like an overall improvement to everything. Aiming, especially with mouse and keyboard, is so much faster and so much more responsive than it was, 15 years ago. Not to mention being able to, more precisely place your stasis areas to affect like the lurkers and some of the other faster creatures, being able to stop them so you can pinpoint, hey, I don't want you having that arm. That arm's too attached to you. I don't like it. Being able to just be more precise is the big thing that I enjoyed. Also, what you mentioned about having to not necessarily backtrack as much, or open doors that required nodes in the original, but being able to continue on, and then if you want the option to backtrack, it's perfectly there. You can go back and pick up any lost ammo or health or anything else that you might have missed.
Next up is Shug. What do you think about this?
So I felt that the game was at least compared to the original in terms of combat, it was a lot faster. Kind of felt very smooth with how it played, and I was halfway expecting it to be almost equally or exactly the same as the original, which, very slow. The slap that he does actually looks more powerful in this game compared to the other game. The key cards were amazing. I actually went and did a lot of backtracking because of it, especially after making the master key. Another one, could it be, what was it? Yeah, like the maps were pretty good. I kind of wish that I could tag stuff in the map, but then again, it's probably not really needed. You just got to remember how to traverse the map itself. But I think the only issue I had with it is that I couldn't really mark stuff for me to find it later on and be like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to go and follow like a trail. But I think overall, like, the combat itself was amazing, in all honesty, compared to the original. It was kind of weird at first whenever you start the game, because they have their own did their own like control scheme. So I was actually happy that I could switch it over to Dead Space 1 or Dead Space 2. I don't remember which one I was using. And made it a lot more of a comfortable experience instead of using a whole new control scheme. What else? I think that might be it. Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to the third question, which I'll go first on. But is there any criticisms with the game that you may have, especially notions that you might have missed from the original? So there's a couple, in my opinion. Actually, it's pretty small, but I'll just list the main two. So number one, I kind of miss when stuff like the plasma cutter was like louder in terms of their gun sounds. Like, it really felt crunchy in the original when shooting that thing, and I just feel like they diminished the sound for some reason. I know they did a lot of audio mixing and presentation on how the weapons will sound in the game, but I just feel like compared to the original, it was not as good. And there's a few animation hiccups that I had where I was shooting someone in the corner and I was backing up into a wall, and all of a sudden Isaac would point his gun into the ceiling, and I would be like, why is he doing that? Why is he pointing off base for what I'm trying to make him do, which is shoot the enemy in front of me? And I had issues like that where it's like he points up randomly, and it doesn't really feel right in an enclosed space. So that's one other issue I had. And then there was one more. I don't know if this was in the original, but there was an issue where I would use kinesis, and for some reason I'm trying to grab like an explosive barrel or something, and then Isaac would pick up something else and it wouldn't be what I want, and then I would throw like a shoe at the enemy, and I'm like, why is he doing that? Why does he not prioritize where I want him to grab the explosive barrel and hit the enemy? So I had that issue a lot on hard mode on stream, and it just felt frustrating. So if they do other remakes in the future, I hope they take that into account, because it was little stuff like that that could be annoying in the long run for certain runs that you're doing, like on Impossible or something. You don't want to pick up a shoe and hit somebody when you know if the necromorph kills you, that's it. You're dead. You're done for the entire session. So I hope they fix that. But Jack, what about you? What do you feel on this? Any criticisms?
Like I said in my previous, some of the criticisms that I had were just the being able to bounce around earlier and earlier, from like jump point to jump point in the original versus the 0G sequence. Because in my honest opinion, while yes, moving around in 0G is amazing and everything, it's definitely slower and a bit more sluggish as you're moving through it. But I can get why they did that. The only other major criticism that I have is if you kinesis moduled a particular like part or something, and you're trying to carry it through a door, sometimes the door will close prematurely on your arm, causing Isaac to go, "Ah!" And it's just very. It's like at first I found it humorous when I did it on stream, but then it just got progressively like slightly more annoying, because I'm like, that's annoying. Some of the things that I missed from the original, it felt like I said, the original felt a little faster. If that's anything to derive from, it just felt just a hair faster than what we got currently. But other than that, I didn't really have a lot of criticisms. The atmosphere is fantastic. The control scheme is amazing on mouse and keyboard, whereas the original didn't really have a lot of mouse and keyboard support at the time. But yeah, I just felt that the game was absolutely top notch and one of the best ones released in the last 4 years.
Doug, what about you? Any criticisms for Dead Space Remake?
I would say like some of those like technical stuff, like trying to slow down a door and it just closes like prematurely on you while it's still in stasis, kind of got annoying a couple times. I would have a couple of I don't know if they're like audio issues or not, but they would cue the song and it'd be like very, very loud, and I would be in the middle of a conversation with a character. Like I was just playing it, and I was having a conversation. I forgot his name already, and there was just music playing over the whole thing, and I didn't hear a single thing he said because of the music just randomly playing over it. I think another one could be whenever I would run, going full sprint, my camera would go crazy. And I would have a couple of issues where I would be, at least I wouldn't be in combat, but I would be just exploring in general, and I would go full sprint down the hallway, and out of nowhere, Isaac would look left, and my whole camera would just shake over left and then shake back to the center and keep going. And yeah, I think like those like were some of the annoyances that I had. Didn't really experience too many. I don't know about other people, but I didn't really experience too many issues besides the fact that it froze on me like 10 minutes ago in the last mission. So that's pretty much it.
All right, Max, it is your turn. The baton is yours. Any criticisms for Dead Space Remake?
Hi. For me, I would say the primary criticisms I have all have to do with New Game Plus. So we do have that later on as a question. So I'll focus more on that then. But other than that, there's one that I'm sure me and Spartan are gonna go off about this. That the flamethrower used to work in space, and there's some in-world lore reason, and now it doesn't, which kind of drove me nuts. But fine, whatever. It's a mechanics thing. For me, this is something I want to bring up, not necessarily because it's a criticism, but I did see people criticize it. As much as the game feels fast, in many facets, it also feels slower, almost methodical and thought out. It's very hard to describe in that things are coming at you quickly. You have to think about it, but it always feels like there's just enough time to act on it, to come up with a plan to grab something, even if sometimes I ran into an issue too where like I would try to reach for something and I'd grab something else, but like, well, it's a spiky, good enough, hit, and it'd be fine. But a lot of people I saw that as like a bad thing. I honestly really, really liked it because it still made you feel like you're on the edge, you had to really focus, but also you had time to think, even if it was slower pace. The biggest gripe I had, though, excluding the New Game Plus bit, is that speaking of impossible runs, there was a chapter, I believe it was 6, where you have to collect a rig from someone in order to fire off the SOS beacon. I forget the exact context, but this happened to people in different places where there's an item you have to pick up that is, critical to the continuation of the story. You have to get this item. This is not an option. And the game wouldn't spawn it. Now, thankfully, this was patched out. This should be fixed. But at the time, it was kind of infuriating because I was doing an impossible run. So, I couldn't go back a save or something. But thankfully, that was fixed. So, everything was totally fine. And then I promptly got killed in the centrifuge room because that happens every time I play the game. But that's just a normal gameplay thing. Otherwise, in terms of criticisms, I saw some other small things like, weapons themselves take up an item slot and other things like that. But really, I didn't have very many genuine criticisms besides New Game Plus, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Barton, it's your turn.
I've only got 2 criticisms, and they're all about the weapons and a little nitpick. Yes, Matt's hit the nail on the head with flamethrower. Even in the original game, it didn't work in space. That was due to a coding issue the devs later admitted when 2 came out, which they fixed. And I thought, okay, you know what, they would have fixed it for the remake. But they didn't. I don't know if that was because they looked past it, they didn't understand that. That's not a massive deal. The other thing that I'm not a massive fan of is the actual weapons taking an inventory slot. Now, I can understand that instead of now having 25 inventory slots, we have 30, which is a welcome surprise. But that was never in the original 3 games. It had its own little mini wheel for weapons, which, yes, still technically exists in the remake, but now in the remake, it actually takes up an inventory spot. Again, it's not game-breaking, but it wasn't something I was used to. But to be fair, someone on a PS5 who played it day one on PS5, I didn't have that many issues with it. It was surprisingly well done game. And I know, again, Max said that there were issues with stuff not loading up properly. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where Dead Space has always had pretty rubbish ports to PC throughout its entire history. But I'm glad that Motive actually got off their backsides and fixed it right away and didn't leave it weeks.
Yeah, there's one thing that I wanted to bring up that happened to me, but it was minor. Like it was a small crash. No, it was when Isaac died on the tram in the initial chapters, and when he died, the game would not say that I'm dead. He's dead, but it wouldn't go to the death screen of the loading Ishimura tram situation. So I was just like stuck there until I restarted it. And I thought that was a weird bug and glitch that they had to sort of, I don't know if they fixed that or not, but it didn't happen afterwards after that initial session. So just some small tiny weird bugs and glitches that I seen, but nothing too game breaking or nothing that would make me say, oh, I don't like this game. I think it was still solid for what it was. So we're gonna move on to number 4. What do you think of Motive's take on all of the guns and weapons in Dead Space Remake? I will let Max go first.
So with the weapons, the first thing we kind of talked about this a little bit, but the idea that in the original Dead Space, let's just make up numbers. You would have 5 upgrades for your capacity, 5 for rate of fire, 5 for power, stuff like that. That theoretically, if you had infinite money, the moment you walked up to a shop, you could just sit there, buy all the nodes, upgrade your gun to become a god gun. And it worked. It was good. It was a great system and encouraged you to explore. But with the node doors, also encouraged you to be a little bit careful. You couldn't just use it willy-nilly. Now you had to actually explore around the environment and find secret rooms that would unlock other parts of the trees with the guns and the weapons. Honestly, I think it's a really good improvement. It encourages you to explore. It stops you from getting too strong too quickly. Although, granted, the plasma cutter will always be a god gun, so that's debatable. I think they were really good. There were some nerfs. There was some buffs. I used to be a staunch preacher of the pulse rifle. I thought it was the best thing ever. But now it doesn't stun, but the flamethrower does. So I've changed religions. I'd say they all feel really, really good. The only thing that really bugs me, and once again, this is a New Game Plus thing, I wish, this sounds silly, I wish you could upgrade them multiple times as you go through New Game Plus, because if you do your full exploring, if you do all the side quests, if you like take your time with everything, what was it? By the end of my first run on Impossible to Hard, because the Centrifuge Room, I had 2 fully upgraded guns, 2 fully upgraded guns, 1 pretty much upgraded suit, and like nodes to spare. So by the end of New Game Plus, I had 3 fully upgraded guns, fully upgraded suit, and I was making nodes that I was turning my nodes into shoes and other jewelry. So I do wish, at least in New Game Plus, you could stack upgrades. I feel like that wouldn't be too hard to program. Sure, you get an insane gun, but it's New Game Plus. It should be insane. But in a general sense, I'll be honest, I didn't really play with the other guns that much besides the the pulse rifle, the flamethrower, and the plasma cutter. But I really did love how they feel. Oh, the different alternate fires based on like Dead Space 2 and 3, all wonderful. I'm sorry, sticking your pulse rifle in the ground and it's shooting 3 shots just like around you, absolutely useless. A landmine, beautiful. I think they all felt really, really good.
I agree. I think that they nailed how the weapons were. The alt fire is great. One thing I really liked is how the weapons will affect the enemies. So of course, if you get the force gun and you shoot somebody with it, the entire skin off the necromorph will peel off, and you'll see that like in real time. So each weapon, obviously, like I said, there is some good and some bad with it. Max talked about it before, where he says some guns got nerfed, and that is true for the pulse rifle. I really wasn't feeling it at first, so I was like, maybe I'll upgrade this gun a little bit and it'll get better. And then I believe someone in the Discord said, hey, just use the alternate fire with the mines, you'll be fine. So I was doing that, and I was like, oh, this is really good for clearing out enemies, this is nice. Then they decided to expand on the gun, so you can go in the store and you'll get like special upgrades for it, where it's like, hey, you'll have more capacity, or you can shoot faster, or you can have flame rounds. And I thought that just added a lot of variety and depth that wasn't there before. So with these upgrade trees, you got a lot more going on, as opposed to saying, oh, here's capacity, here's damage, here's range, here's what we're gonna do. This is like, okay, I can get this expensive upgrade. I could do some stuff with it. I could get a long magazine for the plasma cutter and just go the fuck off. And I think that was one of the things I noticed that was really great. It really gave you time to understand the ingenuity of what was going on, and for better or worse, I think it really worked out well. My favorite gun though is the contact beam. I just love being able to shoot a massive laser and destroy any necromorph standing around it. I thought that was like one of the more interesting guns in the game, along with the flamethrower. I'm kind of like saying, oh man, this is great in like mostly every situation, even well, not every situation, but the ones with the guardians on the walls and they just stand there and it's like I'm shooting the fuck out of them and I have to use the flamethrower and they die instantly. So they definitely buffed that, and it's just the adherence to the guns and understanding how they worked and seeing what they could do with them. But mostly I really loved it a lot. And I will pass the baton over to Jack.
As my fellow gaming associates have stated, that the weapons themselves are absolutely fantastic, have the great punch that they are needed, and I am a firm plasma cutter believer. It is one of the best weapons that you can ever use in the game. While, yes, I have not completed the game in and of itself, I can openly admit that it is a fantastic weapon. The pulse rifle has gotten me out of some situations that I could not have been in without the damn thing, especially placing that stupid mine to blow something's legs off. That way I can back away and pick at it away with the plasma cutter. I've also loved the Ripper blade. Being able to take a saw blade and turn things into minced meat is absolutely fantastic. Therefore, I do declare that the weapons are absolutely fantastic. That is all I can say. Carry on.
All right, so JFK has
voice. The Cuban Missile Crisis isn't your favorite weapon for the Ishimura. I just want to be clear about that. I'd vote for you if it was. Just saying.
I do not wish to. I regret to inform you that I do not wish to answer.
All right, JFK has spoken. He has a presidential election to attend to. Hopefully, there's no snipers afoot. We will continue on to Shug. So, Shug, please tell us. Please tell us what you think of the weapons, sir.
As our elected speaker, he decided to admit that the plasma cutter is the most superior weapon, and I agree. I used that 1 second, and my line gun was probably my favorite gun. What was it, in Dead Space? No, probably everybody hates it, but Dead Space 3, where you could customize your gun and whatnot. I always had a big line gun with another plasma cutter on it. So, I used it as much as I can, and I loved it. And whenever I got the chance to do it in Dead Space 1, I loved it. I used it. I upgraded it fully, both cutters actually, and it is amazing. I love the secondary fire with the extra lasers you can throw on the floor. It kind of screwed me a couple times because I would get overwhelmed and I would get scared and I would just shoot it, but it worked. Another one thing is that the plasma cutter gets an upgrade for when you melee something, they just get knocked the hell back. So it's really good to clear from situations, and I love that because I got in a lot of situations where I was cornered. So just having Isaac just flail and scream as loud as he can while pushing all these people back is amazing. Another gun that I use a bit, but I didn't really use it much for anything besides killing those wall assholes, was the flamethrower. I use that one the most for that. I would just throw the firewall, and it would just kill them instantly. That is pretty much it. The only use I ever saw to the flamethrower. Another one that I had to use was the contact beam, which is the little amazing Kamehameha beam, basically. And I used that to get rid of tendrils when they were far. So like I didn't really use those other two guns besides my cutter and line gun, but I did do some uses of them in some technicalities where I was like, I don't want to use this ammo, I'll use this one because I don't use it. And these wall things that are just annoying as hell, spawning babies on the floor. I just used it for just one-shotting them basically with the flame wall. So like I didn't really use it much, but I still had some use to it. The other guns just stayed in storage because I didn't really give a damn about them.
All right, Spartan, it's your turn. Tell us what you think about the guns.
I'll admit that I didn't actually use all of the guns until my New Game Plus when I was mopping up trophies, because I'm a masochist. I like being punished. So on my first playthrough, I did 100% collectible run on Impossible with the plasma cutter only, and even then, it wasn't that much of a challenge. Tee hee hee. But I will say for the new player, each weapon has its use. I just mentioned earlier that the flamethrower against the Guardians, the alternate fire for the flamethrower is absolutely devastating, especially unupgraded on Impossible, which shouldn't be a thing. But that's almost an insta-kill on the enemy, and it's just so tremendously great. I never really used the pulse rifle. And it was one of those things where I never used it in the original, because I didn't really see much use. Ripper was absolutely fantastic because the amount of stun locks it gives enemies is phenomenal. Going forwards on another Impossible run, it saved me a lot of time and a lot of health being able to knock enemies back, especially in the engine room in Chapter 3. That helped out quite a bit. Only thing that I wish that Motive would fix going forwards, either in a patch or potentially for Remake 2, was that match the ammo capacity of the weapon, the pickup. So say plasma energy is 25, flamethrower fuel is 250. Match that to the max ammo that weapon can hold. Because it's a little bit of a nitpick for me that the plasma cutter has 23 rounds and not 25. Because I refused to upgrade it to 23. It's kept at 20. Why? Because I'm a little bitch. Can't say much more than that.
All right, then. So let's move on to the next question. So this is a bit of a long one, but I'll read. All right. How do you feel about the Intensity Director? This is a new mechanic and AI system that creates noises. New creatures will spawn as RNG, and there is more atmospheric fog in certain places when backtracking to scare the player. Additionally, what do you think of Isaac's voice also changing depending on how much damage he has sustained? I'll go with Max first.
So first, I would like to defend the idea of keeping everything to nice even fives. It's the same on the TV remote. It's the same with money. It's just everything feels better with fives. I get it. But with the Intensity Director, in concept, as an idea, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. I love the idea that like as you backtrack to areas you clear, the game still keeps you on your toes. The different moments where the tram would like start to shake and stop, and like the doors would start to open, and then they would like then you continue on your way. Really genuinely scared me. When different panels on the wall would like bust open, nothing would come out. Would really genuinely scare me. I love the idea of that. However, I wish it was more brutal and it was more I guess yeah, just brutal, vicious, mean about it. Because I played the game before. I'm playing on Impossible. I have an upgraded flamethrower and a plasma cutter. I'm doing pretty good at life. I wish the Intensity Director was more willing to be like, no, you need to suffer today. The example that I always go to is this might sound a bit weird because we're talking about the remake specifically, is Dead Space Downfall, the movie. In that movie, the moment there's one necromorph, literally the ship goes to hell, there's blood on the walls, everyone's a necromorph, everyone's getting murdered in like 5 minutes. And as much as there are moments in the game where I felt that, I wish the Intensity Director made me feel that all the time. I recognize that's not a general purpose thing. I recognize it's probably not for everyone because I'm also a masochist. And I recognize, you need to have those moments of calm. So, like, you can't have all stress all the time, and there needs to be ebbs and flows and all those kinds of things. So I do like the intensity director in concept. I like how it changes, like, different dialogue, how you talk, how your character moves, everything like that. The game is clearly trying to scare you, but I wish it was allowed to go harder, is my main thought on that.
I did like the system, but I had some issues with it. Some small ones, like sometimes I would be backtracking and wondering what's going on. Then I turn around and a necromorph just is standing there, and it's like, can't hear you, man. Come on, man. I should have some be able to hear you out of the corner of my eye, but sometimes that happens where it's like stuff is standing right near you and you don't even know it's there. It makes the game scarier, don't get me wrong, but I just wish that the audio was a little bit better in that department. But overall, I did like it for what it was. I felt like it made backtracking a bit more eventful, because like normally when you backtrack, you just go back to a routine area, you cleared it, it's no problem. This is like, I'm going back to an area, I don't know what's gonna show up, I don't know when it's gonna show up, I don't know how the environment will change, so it keeps you on your toes, and it's like you have to go in being prepared, because you might not have cleared that area, they might fuck with you. They might decide to say, hey, we're going to put a necromorph in a vent and you have to deal with him. There might be a baby on the floor. I saw like several babies on the floor and I went over there to stomp their brains out. So it's one of those things where I appreciate what they did. Is sometimes where it annoys me to high hell and back, especially when they start making like very loud noises and then you go into a room and you find out that the vent just fell on the floor and that's it, there's nothing there. I think those are the worst ones in my opinion, where they make noise and you don't know if something's coming out or not, and it tends to be nothing. But that's the beauty of the game. So yeah, they could have done a little bit more, had a more meaner selection, I agree with that, but for what it was for a first start, I didn't think it was half bad. I'm gonna let Jack go on this question. This is question number 5.
Like, man, speak for yourself. The intensity director has me on the edge of my seat most of the time. Like, the whole fact of it being brutal or further harder when you get further down the game or anything, that can be, like, very intense, man. I play games to relax sometimes, but there are other times where it's like, I want to get into the game, and having the intensity director fuck with you every 5 minutes is like, like, man, that's something else. Like, zoinks! The other thing is, like, when Isaac takes more damage and is able to, like, convey that he's hurting and everything, like, that's just really intense. Being able to convince the fact that this character that we're playing as is in actual pain is amazing. So, like, with the intensity director being such a shithead and everything, I think they could tone it down just a hair. But, like, as you said, like, if you're backtracking through the ship and everything, then it should be fine.
All right, so we had Shaggy joining us with the Scooby Snacks. We're gonna move on to Shug again with the intensity director.
Right. Scooby Snacks with so much Adderall, I swear to fucking goodness. Nah, I'm kidding.
It was either powdered Adderall.
All right,
Sprinkle
Shug.
Adderall into those Scooby snacks. But anyways,
Weed, or...
the horror direction, I loved it. In all honesty, I had the you would have those rooms where they do turn on the fans and the fans start going fast and they just pop. At the beginning, they scared the shit out of me. At the end, they were just pissing me off, in all honesty, because it was happening so much, to me at least. But I liked that whenever I would go into a room, I would do something real quick with the with either buying something or upgrading the weapon, and I would walk out. I go into a different room and I pick like a random node, and I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna go back since it's right there, and I'm upgrading it. And as soon as I go back into this room, there's just a random ass necromorph on the floor, and I'm like, wait, that's not supposed to be there because I was just here and I was not there. So I just stay like at the door and I look at it and I'm like, that's gonna get up as soon as I walk up to it. So I shot it and it did. So I think thanks to I think it's Resident Evil that used to do that kind of shit a lot with the fake dead on the floor. So I would always preemptively shoot every single dead body on the floor, mainly because I have been, terrified and scared to just like walk in and have that shit, jump at me. So I'm always expecting something from the floor to jump at me as soon as I see it. So I either stomp it or shoot it before I go into a room sometimes when I see too many. And just avoid getting scared in general. Other times I would be having just a full-blown war with the pregnant ones and the ones with the explosive arm, and I'm like, I want to keep the pregnant one away from me, and I want the babies to die with it because I don't want to have that problem when I'm fighting them. And all of a sudden I see claws behind me trying to grab me, and I'm like, there's something behind me, I need to turn around also and shoot this, but mainly you end up getting grabbed. So you always have that kind of thing where you're not even safe in the hallway because sometimes something will spawn behind you. And I love that. And I like with how Callisto did it, back when that came out, it did it a lot where some enemies will be just randomly popping up behind you. So I like that too. It scared me sometimes. Other times it was like, oh shit, he's behind me, I need to turn around. But I think the way that they did the horror and trying to scare you at every turn that you had, even going in backtracking areas, it was good. It was fun. It was entertaining. It kept you on your toes. It kept you attentive to what was going on. If you're playing with headphones, you got to turn that shit up so you can hear everything that's going around. And sometimes you would hear the music going off and there's nothing happening. So I think the way they did it was good. They might either have to tone it down a little bit with how much they do it, or maybe tone it up a bit, but more fixed in terms of how much they do it. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. Not really too many complaints about it. I'm always expecting something to jump at me in horror games. So, yeah.
All right, so we're gonna move on to Spartan. What do you think of this, buddy?
If I'm going to be completely honest, apart from the tram stopping in the middle between two stations, I didn't really notice the intensity director that much. I know, sacrilege, what am I saying? But I had hoped that it would have screwed with the environment a bit more, because at the end of the day, we're on a ship that is, for lack of a better word, and pardon my French, fucked. It is screwed. It is damaged beyond almost all repair. Now, yes, we're going around fixing the engines and the navigation, blah, 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 blah. However, what I would have liked is the occasional, we go into a new room and all of a sudden the oxygen is cut off. And we're like, oh shit, is that part of the game? Is that the intensity director? Oh no, it's not coming on. I'm almost out of oxygen. That sort of thing. That would have been fun. Now they could only do that so many times before it gets tiring. But going forward, especially for Dead Space Remake 2, which I've no doubt they will inevitably do, they can just continue to crank up on the intensity director. Definitely work on it because they've got a lot of potential for it.
All right, so we're gonna move on. I just want to add one quick comment on the Isaac voice thing. I thought it was fine. When he's in like danger, he'll say, "Oh man, he sounds like he's on the verge of death." So I liked that they did that. I hope more games do that, where if you go into a cutscene or something like that and you're hurt, he'll speak differently depending on if he's in fine, caution, or danger. I think that adds a touch of realism that he's really hurting and he is talking in a lower monotone voice as opposed to being like more energetic when he's fine. So I want to move on to the next question. That's question number 6. This is for the New Game Plus people only. Did you play New Game Plus? If so, what did you think of it, along with the new rig and the Phantom Necromorph enemies? I will let Max go first.
To add to that point of like Isaac talking different things, maybe it's just me. I think he sweared a bit more whenever you're like super hurt and like stomping, which I always thought was great. That was just like, fuck you, I'm sick of this shit. And it makes sense that you'd be more like that as you're more hurt overall. But okay, so New Game Plus. I was really excited about this when I learned that this was going to be a concept, the idea of like, okay, play the game again, good times had by all. But about one a level, there's a few with two. You need to find a marker, and if you do that, you get a super secret special ending, which I just want to make sure, yep, we're going to be talking about specifically later. I like that overall. I thought it was great. However, as I was playing it, I quickly came into a realization that I only know how to explain this in a little bit of an odd way. Let's pretend for like whatever reason, you go into a zone and there are 10 necromorphs. Just for whatever reason, you know for a fact there's going to be 10. The Phantom Necromorphs, they were freaky, they were cool, they had red glowing eyes. Whenever you saw one, and it was always kind of scary to like see its eyes a little bit in the distance. They would move real fast, move real erratic. Good stuff had by all, right? Or good times had by all. The problem was, though, is if in the original game there was like 9 to 10 enemies or so, in the New Game Plus, it was not enemies 11 and 12 are now necromorphs. It didn't feel like they actually changed the number or the position or the, I guess, intelligence, health, damage of any of the base necromorphs. It really didn't feel like it. It just instead felt like, okay, occasionally, every now and then, there will be one or two that are phantom versions, which was a bit disappointing when you realize that even brutes would have phantom versions and you could still just cryo them, walk behind them, unload a clip your flamethrower, and they would die just like everything else. I was really excited going into New Game Plus, but I quickly became overpowered. Normal necromorphs were just an absolute joke or an annoyance. Phantoms, every now and then, hey, they got me. But never enough to really put me into the red or even get close to killing me. It was the centrifuge again, because there's something about that damn room that always gets me at least once. I'm pretty sure it's cursed. But I was really excited for New Game Plus, and I was a bit disappointed because, kind of like with the intensity director, I wanted them to overwhelm me. I wanted them to be like, oh, you're starting with all your new equipment. You got all your new toys. Fantastic. We're going to kill you now. And I was a bit disappointed at that. As I mentioned before with the weapons, you get nodes out the ass, and unless you're fully upgrading 4 weapons, you're going to have extras. So that's why I really wish, like, as an example, even the unique upgrades, they're like, oh, you fully upgraded your gun. Would you like to have your New Game Plus plasma cutter where you can get all the same upgrades again? And in the same kind of line of thought, I understand if they didn't want to do this in the main game, but the unique upgrades that they had on the weapons in New Game Plus, they could have had unique upgrades on the suit. They could have had unique upgrades on the weapons, like even further. Something to make you feel even more powerful. So that way, if you are the guy that's like, yes, I'm going to run for office, only use the plasma cutter, I'm going to kick ass, take names, life's going to be great. And I have, no joke, 50 nodes. What do I need to do with them? So yeah, I wish they were a lot more intense. I wish there was a lot more enemies and they were just straight up trying to kill you, kind of a thing. And I wish you had more things to do with the nodes. In the meantime, we'll talk about the secret ending of the Dead Space remake in a bit. But yeah, I was unfortunately a bit disappointed in New Game Plus, even if it was fun sprinting through basically fully equipped.
All right, Spartan, I'm going to pass this to you because I have not played New Game Plus, and I don't think Shug or Jack has got there, so you're the last one to answer this before we move on to the next one.
It's just us, buddy. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Again, to be fair, New Game Plus, apart from the extra audio logs and the level 6 suit, and even then, the Phantom Necromorphs, it wasn't that much of a difference. I only went ahead and completed it because if I get a game, I try and platinum it, and one of the achievements was to complete. One of the trophies was to complete on New Game Plus. I genuinely didn't feel that much of a challenge. I wish there was an option where we could have started brand new game, no upgrades whatsoever, and then have the Phantom Necromorphs come in, because that would have been a challenge. because having all your weapons fully upgraded, your rig fully upgraded going into New Game Plus, it's like, nah, you know what's going to happen. It's like they've got spitball guns and you've got fucking howitzer. There's no competition. It'd be interesting to see again what motive tweaks to it going forwards. But it was fun, I will admit, going around being an absolute badass. But again, it's like when I start a new game and I've completed a save file, I start a new game and not New Game Plus because, again, the challenge is not really there for me, if I'm going to be totally honest.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the next question. Just letting people know we're gonna be doing spoilers for the secret ending. So if you don't want to know, I would recommend going on Deafen, and we're gonna get into this with the secret ending. Now I've seen it. I'm pretty sure Spartan has seen it, and I'm pretty sure Max has seen it. So we're gonna talk about this. Your thoughts on the secret ending to Dead Space Remake. We will go with Max first.
Dumbledore dies.
Mm-hmm.
Vader's Luke's father. Blah. I don't know any other like.
If you haven't seen Bambi, I want to warn you about it.
Listen, the last 20 minutes of Old Yeller, a little bit of a tonal shift. A little.
Go lower.
I can't think of any other movies to like directly spoil like that. But okay, do you want me just to give like a real quick play-by-play of what it is too, or do you want me just like?
Yeah, the play-by-play would be nice.
Yeah, literally the cutscene, I'm sure in the video we'll like be showing it as we go. It's literally 20 seconds. Isaac gets on the ship, and as the camera pans, you start to see him. He has a slightly deranged smile and look on his eye, or look on his face. And you can see him talking to the spirit of Nicole, presumably still the influence of the marker. As you can see more blood writing on the, presumably in that 10-second sequence where you like a spiral go in and out of orbit, which is totally safe and fine for the human body. It was hilarious every time it happened. But you can see there's a ton of writing. There's a ton of like almost alchemical style circles. But as we know, those are the schematics and the writings of the marker. It is clearly fully taken a hold of him. And it's hinted at, kind of like it's hinted at in Dead Space 2 and 3, that yes, he can now make the markers. The blueprints are in his mind, and he's going to make it and bring it to Earth. And Nicole supports him, and he's excited to bring it to the, to Earth and to other people to spread the marker's influence. As an ending and as a prize for New Game Plus, I'm gonna be honest, it's a cool scene. It's creepy. I like the idea of, I don't want to say alternate history, but like a what if scenario, right? It's fun. I like it. I wish I got more out of it. I wish more things changed. It was literally like a 20-second sequence and then you're done, which I get it. Like it's my dog Arlo agrees. I definitely get that. Like, what really can you give as a prize for New Game Plus besides the didn't even bring it up, the finger gun, the pew pew bam bam, which is hilarious and overpowered as always. But what reward can you truly give? I get that, but it was kind of cool, but
So I've seen this ending, and what you have to do is get the marker fragments on New Game Plus, and then you get it. It could have been better, like Max said, where it gives you more incentive. Maybe something is alluded to a little bit deeper, or something like that. It's basically Isaac just is crazy, and I mean he was crazy in Dead Space 2, but this is like fully him in support of Nicole, and he's gonna build the marker. And I like the scene how it played out. Like, don't worry, honey, I got something to build, and it's gonna take me a while, but believe me, it's gonna be worth it. I did like the full-on deranged mode coming out of him, but in terms of like unlockables, it's nice for what it is, I guess, but it definitely could have been more if we're going on New Game Plus and playing through it again. I mean, Silent Hill tried something like this. Like, they did the UFO ending where you go back and you pick up pieces and you see something funny, but that was like a tongue-in-cheek joke. Whereas this is like, if you want to see this cool, super duper ending, You have to pick the stuff up, and that was about it. It could have been a lot more. Silent Hill did a lot more with their endings, with unlockables and finding things, and they could have did something like that where you're not just unlocking one ending, you're unlocking multiple if you want to, and they have like different paths and routes to go on. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the secret ending. I want to pass the baton over to Mr. Spartan. What are your thoughts on it?
In my opinion, and again, I will consider the alternate ending as non-canon. It seemed to me as though it was a big character assassination of Isaac, and again, I couldn't really care that much because, again, like I said, it was non-canon. Because throughout the games, or especially 2 onwards, Isaac detests anything to do with the markers. Yes, he's sort of taken for a ride in 2, but his reaction is always to destroy the marker. What I would have liked instead is either you collect now, spoiler alert, in order to get the ending, you have to collect marker fragments. What I would have liked is you collect them and then you destroy them because you realize how much of a threat it actually possesses to the world and people in general. But I think a cooler ending would have been having and I don't know how they would have done it, but having the ship that finds Isaac at the end of Dead Space 1 that brings him to Titan Station. I think that would have been fantastic. Again, I don't know how they would have done it. That's something to mourn. Again, it's not that much of a big deal, but yeah, it's just the alternate ending is sort of like haha, gotcha, little Easter egg. Didn't really add anything to it. It was fun. It was a fun little treasure hunt, but yeah, it was sort of meh.
All right, so before we move on, anyone else want to talk about the alternate ending, or that's it? Going once, going twice. Okay, Soul.
Like, man, there was an alternate ending?
Yes, there was. All right, Shaggy.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking Spartan says is like, yeah, it's kind of be cool if they hinted more at like future games, or I don't know, hinted at the lore drop in the Dead Space 3 DLC or something to actually go with the lore as opposed to like a fan fiction, essentially.
Yeah, it's basically a bad ending. Like it plays out like a bad ending.
Playing the game again is the bad ending that like, wow, you're screwed. So it's like,
well, it can't be any worse than
like a gold suit or like a gold gun, or
it can't be any worse than getting like a needle to the eye, which is alluded to in the game with the cross art thing.
And that was a reward to get a needle in the eye.
Encouraged to take a needle to the eye, which is 10 times more painful.
Sit still very closely while I stab this needle slowly into your eye socket. Sit very still, don't move. Sit very still, don't move. Don't move. Sit very still.
You fucked it up. The whole machine just goes into the back of your head. God, that was a freaky scene. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah. Let's continue on with the story and lore. So, the overall story and lore, the new additions, and the stuff that they added to the characterization. What did you think about it in the remake compared to the original where Isaac didn't talk in the first place? Max, I will have you go first.
So before this video, not necessarily today, but like in the just like in the week or so before, there's a video I watched. I'm gonna rip off Yahtzee Crush. He runs Zero Punctuation. He had this video about the idea of like these silent protagonists. What is the role of one? What is the purpose of one? Is one really, I guess, required or even a positive aspect in today's like technological level? Because, you know, back in the day, we didn't have the technology to have like talking protagonists, so that's why they were all silent. So the question of like, okay, Isaac talks now. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? It's an absolutely good thing. They held to the character. They kept him the same way that he is in Dead Space 2 or 3. The conversations are so much more natural. It's so nice for someone to say, like, Isaac, we need you to do blank. And he actually says, hang on, what about this? He talks like an actual engineer would talk. He gives advice to people. It's all incredibly good stuff. And with the side quests, I love how the side quests were positioned in such a way that, like, if you were backtracking for any reason or with any other objective or to go to a security locked door, you would find them naturally and they would encourage you to backtrack further. And they all had really good tidbits. It was great to see Nicole just like doing her job, trying to investigate. The lore changes. Once again, we're going to be talking about spoilers. This is probably one of my favorite ones that they actually did. Was in the original, you were basically guided by an illusion that was Nicole, but it always drew out a lot of weird questions, like you would have to protect Nicole as she's like programming the door to open. Well, if she wasn't real, how did the door open? How did the necromorphs know to attack her? How did all these weird, odd little questions? Well, in the new one, someone help me out. I'm blanking on her name. I'm sorry. There was essentially 2 more survivors. I remember the husband's name was Temple.
Oh, the other guy is
something Elizabeth Cross.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Cross.
Okay, Cross. Road, just as I was saying, Elizabeth Cross. The idea was the marker was screwing with her to make her think that you were her husband, while also screwing with you to make you think that she was Nicole. It was a brilliant bit of storytelling because it made sense for everything. It made sense why she could open doors. It made sense why the necromorphs would go for you. It made sense that there were still people that you could touch each other. And it was just wonderful. I absolutely adored the differences that they made, all the little icons, all the slight changes. In the beginning, right when you start the game, you could pick up a log that is basically, would you like to know Isaac Clarke's entire backstory? And I'm sitting there like, yeah, this is great. And meanwhile, everyone's yelling at me like, come on, Isaac, we got to go forward to this totally normal engineering gig. And I'm like reading my life like, oh, I love this. This is amazing. Overall, I adored the dialogue. I adored the side quests, story changes. It was all done with something that a lot of studios, movie directors, book directors, however you want to say it, it was something that they don't do a lot of time. It was done with respect, and it was done with understanding the vision, the themes, and just the general story of the original Dead Space games, and not just overriding it, adding their own weird little things, adding all sorts of like unnecessary details. It was done to enhance it and to help tie into it further, which I just really, really appreciated and adored. Also hearing Isaac say fuck as he's shooting and stomping on things. I love that because that's what I was doing in real life.
Yeah, so I agree. I do like when they add so much to the lore. Like they try to how's the word that I will put this in? They tried to add in a lot more drama and melodrama to the characters and their plight.
Growth.
Yeah, their plight to what was going on. So you had Shin, and he comes back later, and I think that Hammond gets killed by him, and it's it's one of those things where it's like they try to make it all interpersonal with what's going on in the ship and how characters interact. Isaac also, because he has a voice now, I like how he illustrates his opinion on the whole scenario. So it's not like two-sided where it's just Kendra and Hammond talking 24/7. Now you have another version of the conflict who adds his opinion to the conversation. I really love that, and I just love them referencing like Dead Space 2, Dead Space 3. There was that scene where Nicole was talking about cross your heart, and I'm like, oh, that sings to me because that's the little jingle that she was talking about when Isaac gets into the machine and he sticks the needle in his eye. So I'm like, yes, this is what I really wanted from the game. Callbacks, references, lore on top of lore, adding in new things that were interesting, because I heard them talking about Isaac's mother a couple of times in the dialogue, and I'm like, what's that about? So they can unravel that. It's just very, very good in terms of what they add in additions, like Max said, where it's like, now Cross is walking around and that's who Isaac thinks is Nicole, and you can already tell he's being influenced and deranged by the marker to the point where he's seeing people that aren't even representative of themselves. He's seeing whole new individuals, and I think this is going to be taken up a notch in Dead Space 2 Remake if they get around to it. Personally speaking, I don't know. A lot of people say they hated every change in the game, and you have your peers in like every survival horror community ever. It happened for Resident Evil. It was bound to happen for this one, but I think this one is the one that really builds on top of everything. And I like how the developer said they got their own Dead Space lore books. They looked at Extraction, the side games, the movies. They really went into detail with this, and the funny thing is, the original director, Glenn Schofield, he said he hated them detailing so much lore. He's like, oh, I just don't have a feel for it. I want to deal with the monsters, the conflict, and the horror, but I don't want all this lore and dealing with all this stuff. And I just felt like that was the wrong sort of mentality to have. I think they definitely nailed it in terms of trying to keep it all atmospheric and interesting with the story. So that's what I think on the characters. I think it was great, and the story as well. So Jack, I'll let you go next.
As my savvier correspondent had noted, silent protagonists being of the wayside nowadays, but that's not entirely fair. We've had more active voiced protagonists since 1996 with like the advent of the PS1 and Resident Evil and et cetera, et cetera. But that's an entirely different subject. Just want to point that out to my savvier correspondent. Anyhow, moving on. What they did with the lore and everything, they kept true to it. And that's one of the big things that I really enjoy about a good, solid, savvy remake. It's the same thing that they did with Resident Evil 2 remake. And, to a lesser extent, the Resident Evil 3 remake, but we'll burn that bridge when we get to it later. But the Dead Space remake is still amazing. What they did, what they added, what they built upon is so absolutely amazing and just so influential. Like I foresee Motive and EA working on the rest of the series, and God willing, hopefully EA keeps their stupid fingers out of it and don't muck it up like they did the last time they tried this trilogy. But yeah, essentially the added addition of Isaac's mother being a unitologist and finding out that she had literally sold all her possessions to pursue this religion. Isaac being like, I'm fucking done with unitology. I hate this shit and this is stupid. And everything that is built on through his backstory and everything is just absolutely phenomenal. And I really hope that they keep building upon this. Like, for example, the jump from Dead Space 1 to jump to Dead Space 2, that build-up was really amazing. I hope they continue that progress. And I would absolutely hate to see them regress with anything that they're doing with this series right now.
I agree. If I wanted to put just a little bit of a spin on it, there is that. I think I said this before. I don't want them to do the same thing they did to Visceral, where they killed them or liquidated them, and all the trust is now gone. I don't think they can afford another culling, because if they do it, fans ain't having it. They're gonna burn down EA with a matchstick and some marshmallows, guaranteed. So, next up on this question, we have Shug. What do you think of this?
I mean, in all honesty, the lore, I'm too lazy to read, so I mainly just pick it up, close it. But I think one of the better things that I liked in lore wise, I guess, it was like we get a lot of background with Isaac, and I like how they do his background and how his mom was a unitologist and all that kind of shit, and she ended up dying and all that other stuff. And it was interesting because this man goes into and does all this stuff that he's doing in his job, and has all that kind of shit in his mind. And you can see whenever you're doing one of the side quests that it just overloads him completely in the head. And so I think the fact that they gave him more of a voice and all that kind of stuff, you can see him be not relatable, but very more understandable character, instead of it being just a silent dude who has two other people talking to him in a constant basis. But yeah, like lore wise, I didn't read too much into it, so don't have a lot to do with this question besides just Isaac being cool now.
All right, Spartan, it's your turn.
The thing I love about what Motive did was that they kept Visceral's trilogy intact. So it's very obvious that when they went ahead doing this game and their lore, they were going to be respectful because they included aspects from Extraction, they included aspects from Downfall, they included aspects from 2, 3. It's fantastic. It's a love letter to fans, it's a love letter to the original developers, and it's done in such a fantastic way that going forward, it is their own universe now. And again, it was very hard to do because it's a remake. You can only change so much. Now they've not changed it; they've tweaked it, which I love, and they've done it to such perfection. And I mentioned before I was going to have to fact check someone. I apologize. You can kick my ass later. In the original game, Isaac's mother was always a unitologist. Always. But not many people knew that. I don't know where they got the info from. But even from the original game, Isaac's mother was a unitologist. But hearing Isaac actually say that out loud, and you could just hear the utter disdain in his voice because his mother cost him a very good education from a prestigious engineering school. Fantastic. They've really hit it out of the park, Motive, with this lore. And it's interesting to see what will happen going forward. And you see on the Reddit posts, what would you rather see next? A Dead Space 2 remake or a Dead Space 4? And it boggles my mind that they don't understand that if you go straight on to Dead Space 4, you're going to have to use Visceral's lore, which, again, it's not a bad thing, but considering how that left off, do you really want to continue a game series in that aspect? I say let Motive do their own thing, because to me, they've crafted such a fantastic split in the timeline. It's gorgeous. It's being so honourable to the original again, and there's just so much more lore added into it. It's fantastic.
All right, so we're going to move on to question number 9. So what was your favorite rig throughout the entire game? This includes pre-order bonuses and the level 6 suit for New Game Plus. Spartan, I'm going to let you go first.
My favorite suit is definitely going to be the Venture suit, which you get in the Digital Deluxe edition, which you can also get for like $10. It's just so gorgeous. It's smooth. It's brilliant. I liked part of the level 6 suit, especially the torso and the helmet. But the arms and the legs, they just were too bulky for a military suit. But the Venture suit goes hard, and it's giving me security and advanced suit vibes, which is probably why I liked it so much.
I'm gonna go real quick. I'm simple. I like the bloody suit. Just seeing Isaac covered in blood. I know that you mostly see it in the game anyway when you smack an enemy around, but just to have it on 24/7, that's great. I also like, Sanctified. I just like anything that looks like a chrome black suit when you're wearing it and whatnot. Adventure is also really good as well. Just anything that also alters the design as well as the suit being in black is something I always appreciate as well. The other ones that I see in the links here, I'm not too much of a fan of, so I'm just gonna leave those on the cutting room floor. So we're gonna have Max go next.
So for me, I have to agree. The Venture suit is just the absolute best. So the level 6 suit, I like it. It looks badass. It's great. The Venture suit looks like a real military, kind of like you were given this on purpose. You're going to run in there and kick ass. Also, it makes me look the most like Samus from Metroid. And the moment I put it on, I was like, yes, let's do this. I mean, the Infested was fun, the Sanctified was fun, but ultimately Venture, hands down. That being said, this is actually a good spot to talk about like a small criticism I have of the game. I understand graphical design, designing suits is hard. Something that I really like about the game, especially on the first playthrough, is when you have like your starting basic suit. I forget if it has an exact name, the rig. And over time, as it upgrades, you get more armor platings, it gets a little bulkier, looks more official over time, right? I really, really wish that they had that with all the different pre-order suits or like the level 6 one as well. I wish you could choose how you look stylistically, even if you changed in terms of gameplay. I wish the Venture suit upgrade over time, the Infested suit, I think that would have been a really nice add-on. Because I played most of my first playthrough only in the Venture suit just because I liked how it looked. But I always felt kind of bad because it was like, oh, well, I want to see what the standard suit looks like as it upgrades over time. So as much as I love the Venture, I really do wish with all the suits that you could see a change or you had a little bit more customizability, which I just think that would have been a little bit more fun.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that the original Death Space 1 suits, the DLC suits, none of those really carried all the way over. It's a lot of them that did not get ported over, so I'm thinking maybe they should reconsider, or when they get the Death Space 2 remake, add in a lot more, because people like to see Isaac progress and look different as time goes on, and that's one thing to consider. Like, people really like the rigs, so why not expand it? Next we have Jack. What do you think of this?
Personally, I love all the suits. I love their designs. I love the way that they look. And I love the fact that they're all practical for the type of environment that you find yourself in on the Ishimura. Just how well the suits are designed for, 26th century space travelers and 26th century engineers, or whatever era this is set in. The designs are so fan-fucking-tastic. I love all of them.
Doug, what about you?
I didn't really do any deluxe edition pre-orders, but I did get the original suit, which is like one that I think everybody gets, and I used that one for like a good chunk of it because I do like the original suit the most, honestly. I think it would have been cool to have like some other suits from the the original ones, like maybe if they did like the Dead Space 3 one with the fur on the shoulders. It would have been cool to have like some of those. I do know that the deluxe ones are also pretty cool looking, but I think personally I would either stick to the original one or the one that they give you in the game that, as you upgrade it, it gets, cooler and it shines. It's very shiny too, so I like that one the most out of all the outfits, in all honesty.
All right, and we're gonna move on to the final question, and that is the survey that we saw over the weekend. So, context: EA is asking questions actively, and I know people are saying, why are they doing this if they know this game is doing well? But Capcom also asked the same question for Resident Evil, so they actively ask people, hey, do you guys want Dead Space 2 remade, Dead Space 3 remade? Comment and tell us what you know. So I want to frame this into a question. If they did remake these games, and considering how you played Dead Space 1 remake and your enjoyments and criticisms and whatnot, would you trust Motive to have a chance to take a crack at it? Yes or no? I'm going to start off with Jack.
I would trust Motive. I would trust Motive with a further expansion on the project of Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3, so long as publishing hands don't get too invested, if that makes any sense. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, good, you've already done perfection. Let me put my hands in there. It's like, no, back the fuck off, EA, you stupid bastards. I would trust Motive with a Dead Space 2 and a Dead Space 3 remake.
Max, what about you? Maximilian?
Oh, sorry, you're cut out, so I honestly wasn't sure who you were addressing there. For me, I'm in the same boat. I think they should totally remake 2 and 3. I was brought up before, like, oh, should we go straight to Dead Space 4? It is always better to write your own lore and to build off your own things as opposed to building off someone else's, because as with every story and reading every book, there's always your own vision versus someone else's vision. So if you have full control over the situation, you can that's not good grammar, you can more adequately create a story for Dead Space 4 that builds off of what you want to build. Even if they like keep the same story beats, which, you know, some people may like, some people may not like, they can work on it and build it up better. That being said, like, what all is going to change with Dead Space 2? It's really hard to say. I would love them to like learn the lessons they did from making this remake and make it even better. Maybe it'll be like kind of the same idea, maybe the same kind of, I guess, gameplay differences just brought into Dead Space 2. I'm not sure, but I have absolute faith in them to make a wonderful product out of it, just without a doubt.
My opinions are the same. I think as long as the publishers let Motive do what they want, just like they've been doing with either Jedi Fallen Order or this game, then it'll be peachy keen. They need to realize that if they meddle around in it like they did with Dead Space 2 a little bit with the multiplayer, shoving that in there, shoehorning that in there, and then to the extent of 3 where it's like full-blown co-op, which ruined the single-player vision of the game, then I would be like, no, I don't think this is a great idea. As for Dead Space 4, I don't think that it is the right time to jump into that project, because 4 was ambitious. They were dealing with a wide-scale necromorph infection. You don't know if Isaac is dead or alive, according to the lore. Even Carver, like, they're both supposedly dead. So you don't know what's going on. And I feel like the story is like Ninja said in the Discord, where he's like, it's just messy. And if Motive gets their opportunity to work on 2 and 3, then they could build off, make 4, and it won't be as convoluted. They could make a window to making a wide-scale necromorph invasion with Isaac somewhere in space, and you play as Ellie or whatnot, like whatever, and they go from there. So it takes time. I think people need to realize that this stuff takes time, patience, and you need to definitely build on this before you can walk. You know, you gotta walk before you can run. You gotta keep running until you get something good and keep the ball going from there. So I think that making 2 and making 3 after this would be great practice for them, and then they can move on to like expansions and maybe transmedia marketing, because I think that's kind of what is missing from Dead Space right now. Like, I remember they had movies and fucking spin-offs and all this other stuff, and I'm like, this is crazy. This series is like really blowing up, and we don't have that. So we got to start back from square one, which is Dead Space Remake, and then they could build off and make more from there. So I'm all for it if it's really good, just like this game. Next, we're going to do Shook.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with this. I would love for them to actually do more, especially do the 2 and 3. If as long as EA learned, so far they have learned their lesson in some ways, into, you know, stay the fuck away from their single player games and just let them do their own work. I think if with the success of this game, and maybe whenever the Jedi Survivor game comes out, I think in terms of like EA will slowly like try to have some sort of faith with them in terms of single player, multiplayer. You know, we're just taking that shit out of there. But I think EA is slowly getting their shit together in terms of having developers do single player games and not just have them put their grimy, shitty hands into these single player games because they want multiplayer. You know, people want single players that they love and that they will continue to love and buy. So I would love to see 2 and 3, and if they do another one, maybe a 4. I would like it if they do have time also. I think that if you give these developers time to actually um, make sure that the story that they're building, of course, will line up with the prior ones, and they don't do any kind of just mishaps in terms of like completely erasing the fact that the other two exist. So it would be interesting, to just give them time to work on their own story while also using the same one that already has been established. I think they did pretty well how they did this game. Of course, it's like a lot similar to it, but with those added little features in between the lore. But yeah, like I'd be very excited to see what they would do if they make a 2 and a 3 remake. It would be very interesting.
All right, Spartan, you're the last one up for tonight. Tell us what you think of this question.
I would absolutely trust Motive with future remakes and the series in general, because like I said before, when the law question in particular, they had every right, even though fans wouldn't have liked it, they had every right to change things, but they didn't. They kept things as much as they could, whilst also putting their own spin on it, which is, like I said before, it was lovely. It was very polite of them to do so, not completely erasing Visceral's work. And yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how they go, because things now have changed going into 2 and then potentially 3. I will say going forward, I've mentioned this in the Discord several times. I don't like it when games come out with DLC at launch, like Dead Space 3, for example. Oh my god! But then again, that was a time of every game had to have microtransactions. If you didn't, then you weren't considered successful. Look how that turned out. Saying that, I wouldn't be opposed now, within a few months, if the remake did in fact get post-launch content. And again, it's not really pay to play, but extra suits, so on and so forth. And yeah, because that shows to me that Motive know how to make a game stand on its own 2 feet without extra financial security. They are confident with the game they've put out, even going far as Squadron, because I believe they only did one update that included several, or just maybe 2 aircraft. So they know they're very confident with themselves, which is fantastic to see in a AAA developer, especially in this day and age.
All right, and we're gonna end the Death Space Remake podcast. Great discussions all around, great opinions, and adding on to a lot of points. So I'm going to do my outro first. You can find me on social media at Renegade Operative on YouTube. I'm on Twitch. My obvious Twitter is operative _ and also Instagram at renegade _ operative. You can find me all there. The links will be obviously in the description below. Next we have Shook. Where can we find you?
You guys can pretty much find me everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok is just at Sugar Bastion. Yeah, pretty much everywhere with the same name, just to keep it keep it simple.
Next we have Jack. Where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitch at Pirate Captain Jack on Twitch, and same thing on Twitter, Pirate Captain Jack, and on YouTube at Pirate Captain Jack. I am the very, very standard person. As 5 friends discuss the Dead Space remake, what will they discuss? What will they find? And will they discover the true horror of the human condition?
I like that. That's like a movie director going off the fringe. But Max, you gotta outro yourself, good buddy.
Yep. And once again, is Max, also known as Lord Ectro. I am a variety streamer and VTuber on twitch.tv/Lord Ectro, and you can also find me on Twitter with the same name. I'm currently going through Hogwarts Legacy, the Metroid Prime Remastered, and I'm looking to start Atomic Heart, all 3 of which, well, besides Atomic Heart, I've been having a wonderful time with, and I'm really excited to play.
Good lord, your backlog. I feel sorry for it.
Oh god, the backlog, the franchise series, it never freaking ends. But I'm very happy to play them. I'm very honored to be here. Thanks again for having me.
No problem, Spartan. You know we're gonna find you only on the Discord.
You can find me on the Discord, but also you can find me on Twitch at The Right Choice. Ren can link that down. I'm branding differently, so.
Oh, be sure to send that to me in like DMs, and I'll put you in the description. No problem. All right, so we're gonna sign out. Be sure to not get infected by any of those markers out there because they will fuck your mind up, fam. And we had a good time on this podcast. Hopefully, when more Dead Space is announced, we'll talk about that in the future. But obviously, we're gonna sign out now. So you guys take care. And the next thing we're talking about, survival horror related, is RE4. That's gonna be fun. It's gonna be interesting. The last trailer looked so fucking amazing. I can't wait. Until then, we will see you guys next time. Later.